Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here with my review of Lupinranger vs. Patranger episode 3. So I thought this was another strong episode. Something I do want to address right off the bat is the balancing between the two teams, which is something I brought up last week because I thought for sure episode 2 would lean towards Pato as sort of a dual premiere, but it seemed more like they structured it almost like an hour premiere focused on Lupin. So I had assumed this one would be more Pato focused, and it was again more Lupin heavy. Now, next week, based on the preview, seems more Pato heavy, and I'm not too worried about it, to be honest. I mean, in general, just because I do like the Lupinrangers, and I feel like I honestly like all of them at this moment. Like, there isn't one of the 6 casts that I really dislike, but it's too early to form anything of a super like or a dislike about any of them. But it's still so early on that I'm not going to start thinking about it or making any real judgments about focus until I would say maybe episode 10. That seems a little late, but mainly because this is a new structure. You know, obviously in series like Kyuranger there was worry over all the Rangers getting focused because we started with 9 and then we added 3 more. But this is like a totally different scenario because they're 2 separate units. So it's going to be interesting, and I fully expect them to have some missteps with that, just because it's their first time doing something like that. So my point is I'm not too concerned about it, because this is still only episode 3, and I think part of the problem is that myself, and I feel some others, are thinking about it kind of in a linear fashion of like alternating like Lupin Pato, Lupin Pato, Lupin Lupin Pato Pato, whereas it might be like Lupin 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 Pato Pato, and then like Lupin Pato Pat Pat Loop Loop. Like I don't even know where I was going with that, but you know what I mean. Like it might be random. Like we might get 4 episodes that focus on the Pato Rangers primarily, and then 2 that's Lupin, and then back to Pato, and then 5 that are Lupin. So I don't think it's going to have a distinct pattern, and I think because of the formulaic way Toku shows are laid out, and especially with stuff like the 2-part episodes on Rider, I'm kind of conditioned to think that way. So the point of this almost like 2.5-minute ramble is I wouldn't worry about that too much yet. But this episode was more Lupin focused, it leaned towards it. Again, I personally feel these first 3 episodes have been about 60-40 Lupin Pato, because I don't feel like the Pato Rangers feel like background characters, but they feel like the B-plot, like the secondary characters, but they still have good presence, and they do a good job of like showing off their stuff. That sounded weird, but yeah. But like this episode kind of took a unique structure of focusing on one of each in a way where like Lupin Blue was kind of the A-plot focus, where we learned about his backstory a little bit, and Nigo was like the B focus, where like the main plot was around kind of a classic Sentai story of like, you know, he failed in the field and had to believe himself. We got a little advice from the captain, but it wasn't a bad storyline. Like I like that Nigo's a little more rookie-ish, and I like the advice the captain gave him, but it was much more basic stuff where we didn't really learn anything new about Nigo or develop him anything, but it was kind of just based off of stuff we already knew, and it was like a standard Sentai tropey type deal. That's a technical term, Sentai tropey. Whereas Blue, we not only learned more about him, but we kind of developed the relationship between the way the Lupinrangers work together and their way of thinking. Because basically Lupin Blue's backstory is very similar to Kamen Rider Knights or Kamen Rider Braves. A lot of people saying Braves. It's funny because I'll talk about that in a sec, but it was similar to that, and it focused on that, and him basically wanting to get the collection as fast as possible to bring his fiancée and the others back, and that was showcased by him wanting to steal the Versus Changers, or the VS Changers, from them in the restaurant, and then later out in the field, and Lupin Red saying, like, I get where you're coming from, that would totally get us 3 pieces of the Lupin collection, unless they're counted as 1 unit, whatever, more pieces of the Lupin collection. But it would ultimately cause more harm than good, because obviously if they snatch it from them in the restaurant, that could out them and get the police on their backs. And also, like, Lupin Red strategically sees them being able to use the Pato Rangers, as he demonstrated by setting the trap for them, like to fall into the Gangler's trap. And then obviously, as we saw at the previous episodes already, you know, their main goal is to get the treasure. So like they can use them by like getting the treasure and then be like, okay, you guys do the Megazord battle, we're gonna go, you know, have a coffee break. So yeah, that was neat. I really like Lupin Red and how strategic he is with that and how level-headed it is. But I understand Lupin Blue's immediate thinking of let's just get this done. And I like that it was kind of a balance in their interaction, where obviously Lupin Red seemed more in the right, and that's where they went. And like Lupin Blue saw and he tied it back to a flashback of his fiance saying sometimes you may not realize the importance of something small. And so I liked that little storyline about him realizing to think smarter, basically. But I also liked that Lupin Red sort of also understood where Blue was coming from and that type of thing. That was something I always felt was missing from Brave and M's dynamic in X8, where it always felt like Brave was totally wrong, even though I think Brave's situation, the whole get it done quickly, actually made more sense. Like, hey, let's just heal the patient now, I don't need to go on about X8 again. Instead, I just really hated the goody two-shoes false approach that Edmund took. My point is I liked the more interaction here, where it didn't feel like, Lupin Blue's way of thinking was out there. It just wasn't fully thought out. So I liked that. His backstory is a tad generic, especially if you compare it to other Toku characters in semi-recent years, but I still like it. I like the one when it's based on a significant other rather than a relative, because so often Toku storylines are about missing parents or guardians, and it always adds a little bit different and a different motivation. And I like that it gave us a bit of a taste of him too, because he was kind of the most bland I felt in the last few episodes, and he's still much more of a stoic character, but it gave him a little more personality, like at the end when he joked about giving them diarrhea. But just that he kind of had a bit of, not a hot-headed side, but a bit of an edge to him. It just kind of gave me a better feeling for his personality. But lean towards that. Power Rangers storyline was more generic stuff. We did get the official debut of Pat Kaiser, but that was kind of weird. Not weird, it was really cool to see. Technically, it was another really fun fight to watch, just like Lupin's last week. But it's just kind of funny that it felt the Lupin-heavy episode was the debut of their mecha. I almost kind of wish they would have held off episode 2, and this week was Lupin Kaiser, and then next week was Pato, presuming it's going to be more Pato-leaning, but we'll see. But it's not a huge deal, it's just more of a nitpick than anything else, because that's almost a second, the main plot was both the character focus on Blue and Inigo, and then you kind of have this secondary running plot about Good Striker and introducing the way he works. Before I get to the last part about that, there was a moment when they used it for the finisher and they thought they were going to transform, and Lupin Yellow was freaking out. I thought that was hilarious, and it wound up just multiplying Lupin Red. And it was really funny because I knew that it couldn't happen, but for a split second I'm like, wait. Did I miss where the Lupins have a fused form? I almost feel like at some point in the series they might do that, even if it's for a gag and a DVD special or something, but that was funny. But Good Striker, kind of went back and forth in this episode, and we got to see his police form. I liked the more, really confused introduction the Pato Rangers had to him when he popped out, at the very end of the battle. And then he fled the Lupin Rangers when they heard the name of the butler guy, and then the butler guy was super shady at the end when he met him at the restaurant. Oh, side note, I love that, which is what I was presuming last week, but I love that at the beginning they thought, oh man, the police found us, but they literally just wanted to eat there. I thought that was really funny, and I hope they don't find out each other's identities for a while. Not drag it out, but I think there's more comedic and interesting potential for character interaction if they don't know who each other is yet. I mean, obviously, they know that they're the Pato Rangers because they're official police, but you know what I mean. So don't drag it out too long, but take advantage of the storyline there. But I thought that was really funny. And then, they came in the restaurant at the end, and the butler guy got out of there quick. And I wanted to address something with that is that since episode 1, people have been theorizing, that the dude's shady, that he's probably going to betray them. I don't disagree. There's definitely something shady about him. I do sense some sort of betrayal happening. I just hope that it's not an outright, full-on, he becomes an antagonist betrayal. Even though they're separate shows, I just feel like it would be too similar to Stalk, where Owner wound up becoming Bloodstalk, and, there was some subtle hints there, but it was a lot more of an instant surprise. Butler's acting way more shady early on, where Owner was just hey, I'm a quirky Owner character and I have super strength for some reason, but that very easily could have just been, not evil. It was definitely suspicious, but I think that they're laying it on a little bit thicker with the Butler guy. But my point is that there's definitely something shady there. I'm picking up on that. But I just hope it doesn't end up being, he ends up working with the Ganglers or his own thing. I kind of hope it's more he's just holding back story. He is a little bit shady. It might result in a somewhat betrayal, but a betrayal that they can forgive that he might end up working with them. Like, that's my point, is I don't want to see it be so predictable where he just becomes a villain and it's more a gray area than black and white, and it doesn't cut off him as a ally, even if it's kind of more of a rogue element ally later. We'll see. It's too early to tell. I just hope it's not so straightforward. There's also people theorizing that he's actually Lupin, which I think could be really cool, and a way of sort of making him shady and like a pseudo-betrayal, but not like in a I'm a villain now betrayal, more like in a I didn't tell you my exact reasoning for this betrayal. Or I could see it being like, I just used you to get the Lupin collection, bye, but then he formed a bond with them, comes back somehow. I don't know. Again, way too early to tell. I just don't want it to be straightforward, predictable. But overall, I thought this was a strong episode. Again, I'm going to give it to Team Lupin for this episode because I've really been enjoying them, and it's kind of unfair because they get the bigger chance to shine, but still. Anyway, overall score for this episode, probably an 8.5. Till next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Dawson Ryder, signing out.